Hello guys, welcome back to Money Sense with Miss T. My name is Tendo Dlo and I am your financial coach. And on today's episode, we'll be talking about all things emergency funds. But before we get into the content of today's video, I just want to remind you to kindly subscribe as well as sharing this video with someone in your circle and like this comment. It helps the algorithm. I know sometimes subscribing may look like, it does not necessarily cost you anything, but I want you to know that it means the very world to me, and growing this channel means the absolute world to me. All right, let's get into today's video then. All right, so I started my professional career as a chartered accountant trainee. So that's like the equivalent of a graduate program of sort. And during this time, if you've listened to my content, you'll know that the first 4 months I was a bit dizzy. I didn't know whether I was coming or going, where my personal finances were concerned. But I eventually invested in becoming financially literate, started reading a lot of books, listening to a lot of podcasts and YouTube videos just to invest in my financial literacy, or basically educating myself about the financial services space. And it also helped that at the time I was servicing clients that were in the financial services industry. So that's banking as well as insurance. So that's where I got a lot of, information and insight on just how the landscape looked like. So I eventually started learning about, emergency funds. But really at the back of my mind, this was just knowledge, it was just information. It wasn't something that, I imagined could ever happen to me. And I think in my financial planning, right, I didn't even factor this in because I didn't think it was a thing, right? And I think the other thing that made it even worse, for lack of a better word, is that at the time, I was staying with my grandparents. I didn't really have any big bills, so I wasn't paying for the car. I was staying at home, like I said, so I didn't have any big bills, and I couldn't imagine how I would ever have an emergency that would just throw me out completely. I think when you stay at home, you're pretty much cushioned. There will always be someone to catch you financially if anything goes south, if you know what I mean. But I eventually, obviously, moved out, started staying alone. I moved to the US, and when I was there, I remember my husband then introducing me to content by Dave Ramsey, who is a personal finance expert, and we were married at the time. We started, consuming the content, learning and trying to find out how to do, marriage and finances together, which was such valuable information that we got from his content, as well as his book and his course, by the way. And Dave basically teaches about the 7 baby steps, right? Or is it the 5? I think it's the 7 baby steps. Yeah. And in those baby steps, top of the list is that you need to have an emergency fund of $1,000, right? And having lived in the US, I think I understood why the $1,000, although it's a blanket approach, it's assuming that everyone, lives within that $1,000. So it's to obviously understand that this was written in taking into account the US context, right? So it talks about having this $1,000 as an emergency fund, because life can happen, right? And life can sometimes go south, and you at least want to be able to make sure that you have something to fall back on. You have some form of cushioning. You have some form of buffer where finances are concerned. As a couple, that, okay, we need to obviously now look into our personal finances or our combined finances and think through how we're going to, set aside, funds for emergency purposes. And at the time, it was not even, we didn't really apply our minds to that extent, but we just knew that, okay, there is a home loan that we have, and the best thing that we can do where that home loan is concerned is to just continue to match what the tenant was paying at the time. And that really, really helped us a lot. I'll talk about the benefits of using your home loan as an emergency fund, or as a vehicle for your emergency fund in a bit. And I'll also talk about how to go about, calculating or thinking through how to raise, or calculate how much it is that you're gonna need for your emergency fund, right? So anyway, we continue contributing. We may have contributed for over a year, maybe 15 months or so, right? Contributing towards the home loan. So paying over and above the mortgage, right? And then, guys, 2020 happened, right? And we all know what happened in 2020. Everything just went south. The bottom literally came off. And I unfortunately lost my income, which was also known as an emergency. And this is where now, the financial resilience that we built, before this event happened came to save us, right? So instead of now worrying about, keeping up with the mortgage, we knew that at least we have built a buffer, we've built a cushion, we've built financial resilience, right? To make sure that we can respond to this emergency. So instead of now allocating funds to this big ticket item, when now we have moved from dual income to single income, we're now focusing on all the other things that are going to help us at least live a comfortable life, right? And then eventually, guys, because again, it was COVID, then eventually the tenant, probably 6 months into the whole thing after lockdown, then the tenant then starts, coming up with excuses. Hey, guys, tenants, ne? I'll talk about tenants one day. I'll talk about investment properties or owning homes or being a landlord one day. I am so bruised. I am so wounded. I am actually not ready to talk about it now. But yeah, then the tenant is not prepared to contribute, and now it's becoming a problem again, and that's another emergency, because you are expecting this income to come in, and it's not coming in, and most people are stuck anyway. Most people are losing their jobs, or their income is getting cut. So a lot was happening during that season. And I'm just grateful that we at least were prepared, So let's answer 2 questions that I did say we were going to address. And the first one is, how do I realistically set the amount that I should have as an emergency, right? And I think the way that you can think about it, and it's the way that I always think about it, or we always think about it as a couple, is just think about, your cost of living as a household or as an individual, if you're still living alone or doing life alone, right? So how much does it cost you to live your life? Like from the moment you wake up, right? The costs that you actually incur. Let's assume you don't even have income. Whether you have income or no income, how much does it cost for you to just open your eyes and operate in this life, right? And the framework that you can use is, you can access actually this on my budgeting template, because I've sort of categorized things in a way that will help you, know what's what, right? So the first part is, according to the template, is you want to make sure that part of the calculation is you are adding your debts, right? And under your debt landscape, remember, you would probably have your minimum payments. So you want to make sure that you are paying those, you are servicing those minimum payments, even when there's a crisis or even when there is an emergency, because if you don't, it adversely affects your credit score, and you don't want that, because eventually at some point you may want to access financing, access credit to buy big ticket items, and you don't want a credit score to stand in the way, right? So that's the first thing that you can take into account in calculating how much your emergency fund should look like. So look at your debt landscape if you do have multiple line items where debt is concerned. Now, the second thing is, you're going to look at your fundamentals, so your needs, right? So let's look at our living expenses just as an example. So under your living expenses, you're going to have to sift through and ask yourself, what are the core critical things that I actually cannot do without, right? And I'm just going to give you like 5 that I feel like are major. So we all need a roof over our heads. We need transport to move from point A to point B to make things happen. We need food. We probably also need to continue paying for school fees if we have kids. And I would also say internet. Internet is what is causing us to do all the things that we need to do work-wise and communication-wise. So yeah, factor that into your calculation. And then the third area is your insurance, right? So guys, insured events do not care whether or not you have income or not, right? So anyone can drop dead at any point in time, right? So that's why it's important to build your financial resilience by also taking advantage of servicing those insurance policies, whether it's life covers or funeral covers, medical aid, etc. Even when, you've lost your income, or even when your income has decreased, or even when you have a major life event that has just really set you back financially, right? So that's how you go about calculating this emergency fund. So add your debts to your living expenses to your insurance, right? So these are the 3 categories. And once you've summed up how much all of those things cost, then you want to ask yourself, remember, actually, before I get there, remember, you are not going to include your wants in this calculation. You're not going to include, so the fun things, the things that you can live without, you're not going to include them in this calculation. You're also not going to include savings and investments for obvious reasons, right? So now once you've summed up your debt, your living expenses, and your insurance, and let's just assume that the round number that gives you is 10,000, right? Once you've determined that that's the emergency fund I need, that is what you want to now start raising. You want to start working towards raising this 10,000, right? And then the next question you want to ask yourself is, let me assess my, my risk appetite. Yeah. How many months do I want a buffer for, right? And it's up to you, right? We all have different risk appetites. And where I'm standing, because of my experiences or our experiences as a household, we are actually thinking, at 3 months is not enough, 6 months is not enough. We probably want to have an emergency fund or a buffer of between 9 and 12 months, just to be safe, just to be on the safe side, because we are also in a season of, taking risks and, doing these wonderful things. So understand how much it is, multiply that number by the number of months that you want to ideally build this emergency fund for. So take 10,000 multiplied by 3, multiplied by 6, by 9, by 12, and that is the amount that you overall need to start working towards raising, just so that you are in a comfortable place. All right, so the next question that we're going to ask is, where can I actually, now that I've determined that I want to start putting aside this 10,000 or 30,000 or 60,000, where am I going to start putting it in? Because you obviously want to put it in an instrument that's going to be beneficial for you, right? And remember, guys, this is not an investment. This is like, think about it as insurance, right? It's the money that you're going to use to respond to an emergency. It's the money that you're going to use to respond to something that you probably did not see coming, and it came, and you actually did not anticipate that it would come, right? If I can put it that way. So very important for you to understand that here, the purpose is not growth. The purpose is for you to just put it in an instrument that's going to just preserve your money, so that when the emergency occurs, you're able to respond to the emergency. So the reason we used, or rather we transferred our emergency funds into our home loan, is because we wanted to take advantage of, the financial maths that comes with, paying over and above the bond amount, the minimum payment that the bank asks you to pay every single month to service the bond, right? So what happens is that, let's say, for instance, your bond amount is 10,000, right? And you decide every single month you're going to pay, let's say, 12,000 or 20,000. That means that you still have access to the 2,000 or the extra 10,000 should an emergency occur. That's called access bond, right? So check it out with your banker. Just let them know that you want to explore, using your home loan as a vehicle for you to have or to raise your emergency fund. But the nice thing with this, guys, is that when you are saving your money for emergencies in a home loan, it also helps with the financial maths, right? So the extra amount, what it will do is that it will knock off the capital amount, right? And once the capital amount is knocked off or it's reduced, right, that obviously means that that's the basis on which the interest is going to be calculated. So that's going to decrease the interest that you're going to be charged or that you're going to incur. And automatically that means the payment that is due to the bank or that you need to pay now to service the bank is going to become low. So what you're doing is you're paying less on a monthly basis, right? And you are basically also fast tracking. If you don't tap into this excess bond, you're fast tracking, paying this bond in the quickest possible time. But also you're also creating financial resilience for yourself to say, if something happens that's unfortunate, I still have access to all the additional funds that I have contributed towards this bond. Okay. The other place that you can contribute towards, building this emergency fund is a normal savings account, guys. Just make sure that the savings account that you're going to use, right, is something that you're not accessing every single day. You're not seeing on your apps every single day, because I think there is a psychology behind, the things that we constantly see. Like if you constantly see that you've got money, you've got this 10,000, you've got this 100, you just automatically feel like you have it, it's yours, you can use it now. So just make sure that you are hiding it away and you're really protecting yourself from using it for other things that are not emergency fund related, right? Make sure that, it's hidden away, and then also make sure that it's in an account that you can access when the emergency occurs. I know a lot of people put their money in like a 7-day account or a 32-day account, blah, blah, blah. You can, because also these are simple accounts, but just remember that you are going to be charged. When the emergency occurs, there's no 7 days for you, right? So what's going to happen is you're going to be penalized. The bank is going to penalize you, and that penalty costs money. And here at Money Sense, we're not wasting any money, right? We are growing our money. We are multiplying our money. So I don't want you to be wasting money on penalties, right? So just rather put it in even if it means going to a completely different bank that you don't go to, just lock that money in there, or in a money market, and forget about it and only use it when an emergency occurs. I hope this makes sense. Please let me know in the comment section if you have an emergency fund, or what in this video sort of helped you and raised your level of awareness to how you can actually navigate the emergency fund space. Don't forget to subscribe and share this video with as many people as you can. See you next time.